Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to FACTS Webinar Wednesday. It's brought to you by the Institute for County Government here at FACT with support from UF-IFAS. For today's webinar, we're pleased to welcome Polk County, who is a recipient of our Best Practices in County Government Award Program. The program was launched by our Board of Directors in 2019 with 3 goals in mind. It's to recognize exemplary work by county officials, to increase peer-to-peer exchanges between counties through best practices, and to raise awareness of county innovations throughout the state. And today, after what I jokingly say months of working on them, I'm pleased to have Polk County join us. And a few years ago, they created a program called Helping Hands, and the program takes what might be called an unconventional but very effective approach to a jail transition model that has a singular focus on addressing individuals who have been incarcerated, typically more than one time, low-level offenses, and often due to mental health and other health issues. And so the program is implemented ensures participants engage in treatment, receive medications, and connect with social services that result in a reduced arrests, crisis admissions, and inappropriate use of EMS services. It is a genuine community-wide approach that includes the dedication of several county agencies, including the Polk County Sheriff's Office, Fire and Rescue, Health and Human Services, jail healthcare providers, and behavioral health specialists, who share information and data to ensure recidivism is reduced and the individual gets the right treatment. And early results show improvements in fewer arrests, EMS calls, and emergency room visits. So with that as a little bit of background, I'd like to introduce our presenters today. We have Brianna Campion. She's the Community Paramedicine Program Administrator with Polk County Fire and Rescue and the lead community paramedic for Helping Hands Jail Transition Program. Mary Beth Moore. Mary manages 2 forensic programs for Polk County. It's the Helping Hands Jail Transition Program and the Roots Housing Program. And both of these focus on reducing recidivism of individuals with behavioral health disorders. And then finally, we have Denise Harrison. In 2018, Denise began working with Helping Hands program as the lead peer specialist. She currently supervises 3 peer specialists who work to provide linkage to individuals for mental health, substance abuse, and primary care, and a 12-step fellowship to its participant. She facilitates weekly behavioral mortification groups in the Polk County Jail and works to refer participants to the appropriate services upon their release. I had the honor of going down in 2019 and presenting this award before the Board of County Commissioners in Polk County. And then later on spoke to a few folks in the media. It's a fantastic program. Folks that are involved in this are committed not only to the individuals, but really to the community as a whole, because it really, in the long run, helps really the quality of life within the community. And then at the end of the day, actually saves taxpayer dollars. So it's a win-win for everybody. So with that as a background, I'd like to turn it over to, I believe it's Mary Beth is going to start us off. And with that, I will turn it to Polk County. Thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you, sir. All right. Again, thank you for taking time in your afternoon to join us for this presentation. I'm Mary Beth Moore, Forensic Manager with Polk County Board of County Commissions. And here in the county, our mission statement is to enhance the quality of life for the people of Polk County. And with the Helping Hands program, that's exactly what we're doing with the population we serve. What's unique about this program is utilizing the community paramedics alongside the recovery peer specialists. I'm going to do an overview of the program, and then I'll turn it over to Captain Campion, the community paramedic, and Denise Harrison, our lead peer specialist. They're going to talk about their specific roles in the program, and then we'll be able to take any questions you may have. So these are our people. I'd be preaching to the choir if I told you the jails and the prisons, they house significantly greater proportions of individuals with mental health, substance abuse, and co-occurring disorders than are found in the general public. And these are the ones we're serving. They're less likely to make bail, more likely to stay in jail longer, and serve time in segregation during their incarceration. for example, on suicide watch. They experience victimization and exploitation while they're in the jail. The vicious cycle of recidivism. Now you see on the right, there are some alternative sentencing things that I'm sure most communities do. For example, we have what we call problem-solving court. So they may end up under the drug court or mental health court, and we also have the veterans court. Another alternative to go into jail would be probation, and we even do the weekend work release. And we found there are some conditions that contribute to being arrested: lack of adequate education, mental health issues, growing up in poverty, and maybe their parent or parents were incarcerated when they were children. A lot of them have a limited work experience, and of course, the substance abuse issues. It was back in May 2017, USF Technical Assistance Center conducted our sequential intercept mapping in Polk County. We had 35 participants representing all the systems: health and human services, law enforcement, county courts, behavioral health providers, substance abuse provider. And it was the SIM that assisted us with identifying the following. And this is actually Polk County's SIMS map here that you see. It identified the points of interception within our current criminal justice system where jail diversion or reentry services for individuals with mental health and/or substance abuse disorders could be developed and implemented. It also identified resources, gaps in services, and opportunities within our existing systems of behavioral health, law enforcement, and the courts to work together. It was there we developed a strategic plan to address the diversion and the treatment of the criminal justice system involved adults with mental health and/or substance disorders. It was basically our starting point for developing the Helping Hands program. So as you see here, this is our Polk County cycle of recidivism. We start with an arrest, and on any given day in the Polk County Jail, we have over 2,500 inmates. 12% of those inmates are receiving psych meds while they're in jail. We also know that approximately 30 inmates a month are being released on psych meds. And we learned a lot of those were homeless. And they had high rates of poor medication adherence. It's very difficult to keep up with your meds when you're homeless. Again, it results in another arrest and the cycle continues. We utilize the Apec model. We do that by assessing the clinical needs of the individual, planning the treatment and services needed for that individual, identifying the community resources available to assist that individual, and then we coordinate the transition plan before they get released. It's been proven a best practice approach for reentry programs, and it works quite well. We actually had a training from USF. Mark Engelhardt came down and trained us all in July of 2018. So we had to come up with the eligibility requirement because we knew we couldn't service 30 inmates a month being released. So we narrowed it down to those inmates that have 2 arrests in the previous 12 months. They have to be on the psych meds while they're in jail. And of course, they must be a Polk County resident. Now, our participation is completely voluntary. And we also opened up our referrals to our community partners. And the only difference in the eligibility requirement is they only need to have 1 arrest in the last 12 months. So it's kind of neat. Our managing entity, which is Central Florida Behavioral Health Care and the Polk County Sheriff's Office, they have a database, and it actually produces a list of names of all the individuals in the jail that meet this criteria. I received that list from Central Florida twice a week. And it's at that time I'm able to go through utilizing the jail mail kiosk system. And I send that inmate a message explaining about the program and asking if they're interested to please fill out the consent and release the information and send it back to me. And then it's after that, we do our weekly staffing. And we'll talk more about that when we get done with this. So we also had to have some goals. Of course, we want to reduce arrest and jail days, reduce detox admissions, reduce CSU admissions, crisis stabilization unit, reduce emergency department utilization, reduce the total healthcare expenditures, and reduce jail expenditures. We also want to increase access to primary care, increase access to the behavioral health services, increase engagement in support group recovery services, such as the 12-step program, increase employment rates for those that were employable, and of course, help them get stable housing. So our community partners are essential to the success of this program, and we actively collaborate every week to talk about individuals, their historical service records, their criminal history, their mental health substance use diagnosis, and then we determine if that individual is appropriate for the program. We look at their history of compliance and non-compliance with our community providers and determine the needs, potential barriers, and preliminary solutions to ensure successful transition from the jail to the community. And I believe Eric mentioned our partners, but I'm going to go ahead and do that again. Polk County Sheriff's Office sits at the table with us. Horizon Health, which is a third-party healthcare provider in our county jails. We have Polk County Fire Rescue, Tri-County Human Services, which is our community substance abuse provider. We have the Bay Care Center for Behavioral Health and Peace River Center, which are our community behavioral health providers. And we just recently added Lakeland Regional Health. What we learned was we had a whole population. Lakeland, Florida is pretty populated compared to some of the rural areas of our county. So we were missing the historical information that those that went to Lakeland Regional received. So they came to the table and joined us as well. So I want to talk a little bit about the savings of the program. This is for the fiscal year October 2019 through September 2020. You see the jail days pre-enrollment and the jail days post-enrollment. It actually came to a 96% reduction. Cost saving is over $679,000. EMS utilization, we actually had an increase this year. The last 2 years, we had a decrease. I took a look at the 87 people we served last year, and we had one individual that had a whole lot of EMS calls post. So that kind of jumped it up on us this year. We weren't expecting that. You look at ER hospital utilization, again, we had a 23% reduction with a cost saving of over $214,000. So we had to come up with a plan on how we were going to house those that were homeless coming from jail. It was in August of 2018, we were awarded the Criminal Justice Mental Health Substance Abuse Reinvestment Grant, $1.2 million over 3 years, which equates to $400,000 a year. We were able to provide a housing specialist, and this was important because this population with their criminal background, and a lot of them have records of eviction, this housing specialist is able to establish relationships with landlords and ensure access to affordable housing with the goal of them being able to sustain when they complete the program. We also added a benefits specialist, and that was to assist the individuals with securing Social Security benefits if they were eligible. They also assisted with those that were receiving benefits, but due to incarceration, it was turned off. They help them get it turned back on. They also assist, of course, with food stamps, Medicaid, and if they're not eligible for Medicaid, with our half-cent sales tax in Polk County, we have the Polk Health Plan, so we're able to get them primary care services as well as services with our community partners I'm going to turn it over to Denise Harrison, our lead specialist, and Brianna Campion to talk about their specific roles and some of the changes we've made to better serve our.
Hi, I'm Denise Harrison. I'm with Tri-County Human Services. I'm the lead peer for the Helping Hands program. One of the things that we realized coming into this program is that the first couple of years were going to be very fluid. We paid real close attention to what worked and what did not, and what changes needed to be made to catch the majority of the population. One of the things that we did in the beginning is that we really weren't providing any type of contact or services until right before they were released from jail. We looked at that, that was not working. So that's when we came in and we brought it to the table at the providers and talked about what we could do differently. And what came out of that conversation were to do behavioral modification groups in the county jails. Depending on the group size, we normally do 3 a week, 2 at Central County Jail for the women and 1 at South County Jail for the men. With being able to do the groups in the jail, we really get an understanding of what their needs are, what it is they want, what is their idea of success, and how to help encourage them to see if we're going to be able to get along and our expectations meet to where we can provide services and to help them get back on their feet. Once they attend groups for a few times, then we bring it back to the table. We talk about the progress in group and recommendations. If substance abuse is an issue and it has been determined that residential services are going to be needed, we have a conversation with the client. We let them know, hey, look, this is what we're going to recommend, but if you're willing to go into residential treatment, we're willing to hang out and pick you up on the back end so you still have that support coming out. Once we identify who's going to come into phase 2, I assign a peer specialist to begin working with them in the jail. So they see them probably bi-weekly to start establishing that rapport, the importance of recovery, step work, mental health compliance, things like that. And then when they're released from jail, they have that same peer. So they already have a connection, which is very helpful for us. So we know what they act like when they're medicated and substance free. So we have a pretty good idea when there's a problem. Recently, we just added to our list of services we provide are drug screens. So those that are active in the community, we have a starting point if things begin to go sideways for those folks. Once we get ready to bring them into phase 2, that's when I make contact with Brianna and let her know who's ready to have CP screenings. And I'm going to let Brianna talk to you a little bit about what they do on their end.
Thank you, Denise. So before I dive into exactly what the CP screening, give a general overview of the role that the community paramedic plays within this program. So the community paramedic team is composed of paramedics who traditionally work in the 911 system for Polk County Fire Rescue, and that were recruited mental health disorders and substance use disorders so that they could serve as community paramedics in this program. Some of the key trainings that our staff received in order to prepare them for this role include things like mental health first by the National Council for Behavioral Health, and then also trauma-informed care, motivational interviewing, and stages of change. Beyond that, they've also received a number of trainings through the various behavioral health and substance use providers about the types of services they offer. And also some tips and tricks for managing things like acute behavioral health crises, and getting a little bit more education on psychopharmacology. So once Denise has identified that an individual is going to be a good fit for the Helping Hands, it's assigned to that individual and they go in and do a fairly comprehensive screening. This screening collects information about their demographics. We get an emergency contact person. We ask them a number of questions related to their history, health services, substance use services, the number and types of incarcerations they've had in their lifetime. And then we get into some more details about employment history housing status history, and come up with the primary and secondary needs are going to be for this individual once they get out into the community. And depending on where this individual is going, for instance, if they are going into a residential treatment program, or they're being linked up to typically place a hold on that individual by making contact with the sheriff's office and their classifications division. They're able to place a detention hold for helping hands. And that basically ensures that that individual is staying at Central Booking and pick them up and then transport them to the destination that's been determined beforehand. And Denise?
Okay, and picking up where Brianna left off, once they are brought to us and we make contact and we are able to, again, develop that case plan as to what goals they want to achieve, who do they need to meet with, what service provider they would like. Because again, we have to remember that this is client-centered. We don't tell them what they're going to do. Our job is to support and suggest. If they're running into a brick wall, you might want to say, hey, heads up, there's a wall over there. But ultimately the decision is theirs. We can't treat everybody the same. Everybody's individual. My idea of success may very well not be their idea. So we spend that time getting to figure out what are the needs, what goals do they want to achieve, and we get busy on that. Normally when they're coming out of the jail, they don't have an ID. They do not have a social security card. They don't have anyone they can call to bring them some food. So we look at the immediate needs the first couple of days. What do we have to do to ensure that they're going to be okay tomorrow? Once we get those needs met, then we start rippling out to what we need to do. One thing with COVID, those individuals who are not recommended for residential treatment of substance abuse may be recommended to outpatient services. But what the problem is COVID has caused is there is a delay in getting into some services. Not impossible, but there's a delay. So we need to start working with them to get them linked with 12-step recovery. Some of these folks have never been into a 12-step meeting before. And, you know, although they can handle themselves in jail, it's very scary when you're doing the right thing sober. So that's when the peer specialist comes in. They go with them to the meeting. They introduce them to some folks in the meeting, see what it is that, you know, which fellowship they like, which fellowship they don't like while they're waiting on getting into outpatient services. Once we get their IDs back, once we get their social security cards back in, we can start looking for employment and kind of being their cheerleader, setting goals that are obtainable. You can't have someone come in who doesn't have a high school diploma and they want to get their master's degree. I mean, that's a long-term goal, but we're talking those short-term goals that we can celebrate. We're getting them linked to a mental health provider. We're making sure that they're taking their medication as prescribed. It's really fortunate that we have the community paramedic piece, because if we have questions that they're not in compliance with their mental health medication, all I got to do is pick up the phone and call one of the CPs and ask them, hey, can you come do a medication inventory? If medications are kind of counteracting, they're making them feel funny, the community paramedic can actually go with them to the doctor and help them speak to their provider as to some of the issues that are going on. We find that to be successful so far, and mental health compliance has gone up considerably before jail versus after jail with this amount of support services that we're able to implement.
Just to add a little bit about the medication component, as we referenced this back in the beginning of the presentation, one of the things that we identified with this population, medication adherence after they had been released from the jail. And so one of the key pieces that we've implemented in this program to help maintain greater medication adherence is providing these individuals with a 30-day supply of, originally we were just doing a 30-day supply of their psychotropic medications, but we've since expanded that to include any and all medications that they're receiving. So that would include things like medications to manage hypertension, medications to manage diabetes, we have all of those, the community paramedics have those medications in hand on the day that those individuals are released. So we're ensuring at least that they have this 30-day continuity from the jail to making a linkage to a behavioral health provider. And then we can help them adapt to any changes that they have in their medication regimen once they've had that first meeting with a behavioral health provider or their primary care physician out in the community.
All right. Thank y'all. And we've got some questions, and if it's okay, can you go back prior to implementing this in 2017? Were there some triggers that really pushed the county to go in this direction? Had you tried some other programs, or was it just a point where people were just kind of fed up on the law enforcement side, on the human services side? What was there a specific trigger or triggers that started this?
Well, there was. Our Citizens Oversight Committee, which oversees our half-cent sales tax through the indigent healthcare, Dr. Thomas McMicken was very passionate about this population, and he saw that there was such a need for those individuals with mental illness that were incarcerated and they needed help. So it was kind of his vision that kicked this off. And Kathy Hatch was one of our champions in this, and writing grants and researching and putting together the sequential intercept mapping and bringing all the partners together. And it kind of kicked off from there.
So let me ask, has the program since 2017 evolved? I got to believe that you weren't able to put together the exact blueprint that you have today. Did you have a framework, and then as you began to put it in place, you added pieces or took pieces away?
That's exactly correct. And we can continue to do that today, Eric.
So it's a program that's, it seems to me very nimble for any sort of service that might be interested in providing that help. Let me ask, a program like this, and Mary Beth mentioned it a little bit about champions. Champions are important, and certainly, one of the primary champions at the county level has to be the ones who control the budget, and that's the Board of County Commissioners. They even control the budget for sheriff. What type of interest and support did you get from the board, at least at the beginning, and where is it today?
Well, I would say they were supportive of us starting this endeavor, and we continue to modify. Our return on investments looking good. Yes, we did have an increase in detox services. We had an increase in mental health and substance abuse services. However, that's exactly what the program's trying to do, because what we did is we had a 96% decrease in jail costs. So it kind of equaled itself out. Yes, we're not making money doing this, but we're getting the citizens the services they need to be productive citizens in our community.
So can we flesh that out a little bit? I'm going to pretend I'm a county budget officer, and with respect to return on investment, you did indicate that there was a 96% reduction in jail days. But I have to say that I'm assuming that that's part of that is because, and there's nothing wrong with this, is that you target certain individuals who would qualify for the program. So you get that reduction, but what about recidivism? Are you measuring success based on whether or not those folks return to jail?
Yes, we keep that for the Roots program through the criminal justice grant. I report on that quarterly on how many actually following 12 months leaving the program. So I start with how many arrests they had 12 months prior, any arrests they get during the 12 months they're enrolled in the program, and then I track them for a year after. And we've been very successful there in reducing that.
Are you able to let us know what the cause of some of the recidivism is? Is it that someone stopped taking their meds or simply refuses to participate in the program?
I would say, and Denise, correct me if I'm wrong, it's probably not following the recommendations and they continue to abuse substances. We have a huge problem with methamphetamines in our community. And you can't use meth and take mental health meds and expect to be okay. So they just they'd rather go back to doing what they did before. And we see them right back at the jail shortly thereafter, time and time again.
Are you able to report on that number today?
Oh, I wish I had it in front of me
Okay,
here.
it's okay. I mean, it seems to me that a return on investment is measured in two ways. One is the quantitative way that a budget person or a bean counter would do. And that's an important piece of it because you need to know whether or not the investment is worthwhile. But there's got to be a qualitative return on investment that you can't measure through dollars and cents, right? I mean, there's got to be those in the community that have gone through it. It's improved their lives. Are there anyone that has gone through the program that is, for lack of a better word, sort of a champion and would love to offer a testimonial or anything like that?
I'm going to let Denise Harrison speak to that.
We had an individual who started attending groups down in South County. We will call him Mr. T. Mr. T has spent 26 years total incarcerated when you add his juvenile and his adult record together. Mr. T had a long history of mental health diagnoses, not a large history of treatment for those issues. He was attending groups and, normally they all want to know what my recommendation is going to be. And Mr. T's like, Miss Denise, I'll go to a program, no problem. And I told Mr. T, I don't need you to go to a program. You've been in programs your entire life. I need you to get busy living. You were raised by inmates. You have been raised by criminals, and I have to get you to where you're willing to be retaught. He thought about that and came back to the next group the next week. He said, you're absolutely right. I've been raised by convicts. And I said, well, absolutely. Mr. T got released from the Polk County Jail. The community paramedics picked him up and brought him to us. We put him in a temporary housing location until we were able to secure permanent housing. And when I tell you this man has flourished, he is now a full-time employee training for management. He has his own place. He's maintaining his bills on his own. He's in compliance with his mental health. He attends church every time the doors open. He has really came forth and done some remarkable things with his life. And I'm sure he'll tell you, it is because of all the support services that we wrapped around him. A society had given up on him. His family had given up on him. And we were over here being his cheerleaders. You can do it. You can do it. Now, he didn't do everything perfect when he first got out. He got a job and his mouth kind of cost him that job. But he learned his lesson, went to another job. He wasn't making enough money, so we talked about it. We developed a plan. He put out his resume, got a better job. I mean, he's doing wonderfully. And there's a lot of stories like Mr. T. Given the opportunity to learn better, people tend to do better. And that level of accountability, when we're going by and knocking on the door, how are you doing? Come outside, talk to me for a while. How's your mom and them? And figure out what their needs are and treat them like human beings. They tend to do a lot better.
I mean, you just said something that's kind of woke me up. I mean, someone that has spent most of their life in incarceration, whether they were in juvenile detention and then as an adult, raised by criminals. So it seems to me that some of that population would be reluctant to talk to a person like me or to you, even though you've got this great program. They may have seen others even while they were incarcerated. It seems to me like somebody like Mr. T would be a good person to have as a recruiter. Have y'all talked about having someone like that come in and talk to these groups and say, look, this is going to work. It's going to take a lot of hard work, but it's worth it?
Actually, we have used Mr. T in a promotion where we have talked about the program and what it did for him and how it impacted his life. So we keep close tabs on Mr. T, and Mr. T keeps close tabs on us. Even though he's long been closed, I think almost a year now, not quite, almost a year. He will still call us, hey, I just want to let you know this is what I'm doing. And he calls and asks us how we're doing and vice versa. So it's great working with him.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, I would believe it's got to make all the hard work worthwhile. Kind of as we wrap up here, I just had a couple of other questions. There's a number of different sort of programs in the smart justice world, and whether it's issuing civil citations and other jail diversion programs. Is this program very unique to your county? Is there another community that has done something nearly identical, or is this really something unique to Polk?
Brianna, correct me if I'm wrong, but I want to say it's unique to Polk. I'm not sure of any other communities utilizing the community paramedics and the recovery peer specialists alongside each other.
Yeah, I would agree that the unique mix and the dynamic that we've achieved with our frontline providers, so to speak, in this program, the peer recovery specialists and the community paramedic, that's something that is very unique and especially unique in achieving the objectives and the program goals that we've set out.
And then along the same lines, have other communities reached out to you to ask how you have made this work?
I know Kathy Hatch, who was the spearhead of this program. She had, especially after going to Las Vegas and speaking, several from all over the country reached out and kind of picked her brain and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it just seems like an ideal model, so long as you've got the local support and the local commitment. But I think we're going to wrap up here. I promised you probably 30, 40 minutes for today's presentation.
And can I just add one more thing?
Sure.
One of the benefits that we got out of this program that I did not see coming when we started this was, I believe in desensitization. And when the Polk County community paramedics go into the jail and they're wearing a uniform and they're going and meeting with our clients in uniform, it starts to change their thinking of individuals in uniforms. And that is one of the greatest rewards that I'm finding in this. They're more apt to talk to the police. They're more apt to talk to the paramedics. They're more comfortable once they put, this person's not trying to take me to jail or lock me up in a mental hospital. They're trying to help me. And that's one of the great benefits of this program, utilizing the Polk County paramedics as well. I just want to give them credit for that.
It's awesome. I'm very impressed. Y'all are doing God's work, and keep up the good work. I would encourage you guys to let others know what you're doing. It seems to me this is something that a university researcher would love to track and do research on. But I want to thank you guys for all the work that you do. Thanks for your partnership, and thanks for coming on today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.